Don't worry, don't worry. Today we are going over an article on BleacherReport.com. I don't need to hit Shaw with my entire rant of the fact that the NHL doesn't have its own category on the top of the website like I did in the video yesterday. I'm just gonna assume that you had seen that video and you already kinda know my feelings on this. Either way, though, there are a few other ideas that were written about here on Bleacher Report over the past few days that I thought were really interesting, including this article from earlier on Saturday. Take a look at what Adam Gretz wrote about in regards to 5 NHL players who are likely to be traded next during the 24-25 season. Now, of course, self-explanatory as it is, this is an article of 5 guys, burgers and fries, and what I wanted to do in this video was go out there and talk about 3 of them. Because we have limited time here, we can't go out there and immediately dive into every single idea. But out of these 5 names, there are 3 that stand out to me the most, including the very first one that is written about in this article. Let's talk about what Gretz writes in regards to Linus Ullmark of the Ottawa Senators. Could he be some sort of a trade candidate this upcoming year? The Ottawa Senators just acquired this guy. But when it comes to the circumstances of the contract, this is what Gretz goes out there and says. Ullmark may have just arrived in Ottawa earlier this offseason after coming over in a trade with the Bees, but there's a very good chance that it is a short stay in Ottawa. Not only is Linus Ullmark entering the final year of his contract and set to becoming a UFA after this season, there is a real chance the Sens miss the playoffs again and fall out of serious playoff contention by the deadline. If the Ottawa Senators are not convinced that they can re-sign Ullmark to be their long-term goalie, and if they're not in playoff contention for the 8th year in a row, it would only make sense for the Sens to put him on the market and try to get something back for him. Now here's the thing with Linus Ullmark. I feel like the future for him in Ottawa, it really does depend on that specifically, whether or not the team is good enough to keep him around and whether or not he's willing to stick with this team after establishing himself as one of the best goalies in the NHL. Linus Ullmark is 31 years old after all, so the next contract that he signs, whether it's with Ottawa or with some other team, it probably will be the last contract he ever signs, unless of course he goes into his latter 30 years and just kind of signs 1 or 2 year deals here and there. There are a few goalies that do that once in a while, it's not uncommon. But for Linus Ullmark, he is so good, and he has been so good in the past, that he definitely does deserve the right to hold out and go where he wants to go, right? The Bruins made their choice in keeping Jeremy Swayman over Ullmark, and the Ottawa Senators needed a goaltending boost. You can say that it was like a huge need for Ottawa, so if Ullmark provides, let's say, a minimum 9-10 goaltending, that's already a huge boost to what it is the Ottawa Senators can provide on the ice. Maybe that's an extra 4, 5, or 6 wins on a season. I mean, don't go out there underestimating how bad Joonas Korpisalo and all those other guys were for the Ottawa Senators last season. Ullmark, of course, is coming off of a .915 save percentage year, and he's 2 seasons removed from being a Vezina winner. He's kind of been meh in the playoffs the past few years, which is probably like the big wart on his overall statistical breakdown, but then again, come on, you're on Ottawa. Make the playoffs first, and then we'll talk. If the Ottawa Senators, though, are not able to agree in giving Linus Ullmark the kind of money that would convince him to stick around, then hey, I guess it is possible that he does get traded, right? His contract does not have any trade protection right now. He's making $5 million a year till the end of this upcoming season. And for a guy who was a Vezina winner just a year ago, pretty much, you definitely can say that his future very well depends on what the Ottawa Senators are capable of doing in the now. With this in mind, let's go over to the next name that I wanted to talk about in this article from BleacherReport.com. It is Andrei Kuzmenko of the Calgary Flames. Is he a trade target once again? Who really knows? Kuzi is in the last year of a deal that he signed with the Vancouver Canucks, and it always intrigues me to dive into what people are saying about him and his future. The Flames acquired Kuzmenko as a part of the Elias Lindholm trade during the 23-24 year. It ended up being a great opportunity for him to get a fresh start and rediscover the goal-scoring touch he had displayed during his debut season in the NHL. He might not score 39 goals again, but he can still be a 25 to 30 goal scorer in the NHL and be a viable complementary player for a contender. The Calgary Flames, though, are not going to be that type of contender. given how many veteran players they have traded away over the past few years. And this is the big list, man. Lindholm, Tanev, Hanifin, Markstrom, Mangiapane, Zadorov, Tyler Toffoli, they're likely headed for another non-playoff season and just starting to retool their organization, if not completely rebuild it. As a pending free agent, Kuzmenko should be the next player to get moved this season. Now the thing is, I'd say Kuzmenko is young enough that if you wanted to say, yeah, we could have this kind of a guy on our team as a transitory player to play in our top six, while Matthew Coronado, Connor Zary, and all these other guys that are younger are able to transition full-time into middle to top six roles. If you wanted to say that you needed some older guys to play and get those minutes right now, Andrei Kuzmenko is not a bad bet. You know Jonathan Huberdeau's not going anywhere because that contract is kind of immovable. Same thing you might be able to say about Nazem Kadri. Okay, maybe it's a lot easier to move Kadri's deal considering the season he had, but still, if you wanted to keep some guys around, Andrei Kuzmenko is not a terrible bet. Now sure, you could say that because of his status as a free agent to be, and because of the Flames' position in the NHL, it would be easier, it would be better, it would be more beneficial to get a trade done with Kuzi. But at the same time, he's young enough where if he wanted to force it, and if he's able to get you 25 to 30 goals a year, I would understand if the Calgary Flames just decided to keep him as well. Although questions will remain as to whether or not Kuzmenko really is a fit with this team, whether or not he's the guy that was able to score 39 goals and 74 points last year with the Vancouver Canucks. Kuzi's got 25 points in 29 games in this most recent season with Calgary, which is totally a step up from what he had accomplished in Vancouver the first half of the year. But at the end of the day, is that going to be enough to let the Calgary Flames keep him around on another deal for 2025 and beyond? Finally, I wanted to talk about the last name in this article. It's the third name out of 5, but you know, there are a bunch of other ideas and more paragraphs to write about in this piece, so check it out if you want to see it yourself. Let's go over to the New York Rangers and talk about Kaapo Kakko, because this article goes out there and lists him as a trade candidate as well. Kakko is the type of player that is going to get perpetually underrated and underappreciated. He was the second overall pick and entered the NHL with huge expectations for a big market team, but his traditional box score production has not matched any of that. Because of that, he'll be viewed as an underwhelming player and perhaps even a bust. But he's not. And before we continue, I wanted to say it's very good that Gretz is going out there and saying, yeah, Kaapo Kakko is not a bust. Like, he's not ineffective, he's not terrible, he's a good player, Gretz writes, who does important things for his line and is the type of player every coach and GM would love to have. If he was a 24th overall pick instead of a 2nd overall pick, the perception of him would be entirely different as a player. Despite that, it still seems like a trade could be on the horizon. As useful as he is, the Rangers still do not seem to trust him in a top-line role, and he is one of several players eligible for RFA status this offseason and is due for a significant raise. Perhaps the Rangers do not want to pay that raise. Maybe they don't want to risk an offer sheet situation, or perhaps he's just the type of player who could be dangled as an in-season trade chip to help them get better in other areas. Good player. It still seems like his time with the Rangers could be limited at this point, though. And these are all assets that Kaapo Kakko brings to the table. He has the skill, he has the capability, he has the talent. It's just the Rangers don't really trust him, and he hasn't been too consistent compared to what he probably should be for a 2nd overall pick. I think that reputation comment really is true, because you have to start building up these players' ideas long before they're even playing for your hockey team, right? If you make a trade, you make a signing, you draft a guy, fans usually have some sort of an expectation as to what that player is going to be. And for a guy who's 2nd overall behind Jack Hughes, for crying out loud, the expectations were there from the very beginning. While some guys have taken a few years to eventually overcome and maybe even live up to their expectations, like Alexis Lafreniere and that same Big Apple team, Kaapo Kakko just has not been given that opportunity to do so. And so, when you think about the potential of an RFA raise, an offer sheet that could be there, it would only make sense for the Rangers, who are wanting to better their team, to make some sort of a trade and get it done. Give Kakko a change of scenery, give them a player they could trust more, and everybody's happy. Right? So with all this in mind, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about these 3 guys being potential trade targets and trade candidates for the 2024-2025 season? They're listed among the top 5. Do you agree or disagree? Thoughts in the comment section below about Linus Ullmark, Andrei Kuzmenko, and Kaapo Kakko trades, and whether or not those are possible. I hope you enjoyed this Swedish Arrows 9, and bye.